hopefully we're having the baby. Hopefully.
A few moments later.
It has not progressed far enough along for them to keep me, so I got to deal with this awful pain at home. So that's fun. But they're giving me something to help me rest, and then it'll, I'll still feel the pain and stuff, but I'll be calm enough to sleep, basically. That's what it's gonna do, so. Alrighty, so we are doing Levi's birth story all while I get ready for the day. So, bear with me on that front. But I never verbally started where I should have when I was originally telling the story, because you will notice that there will be clips from when I was in the hospital telling the story when it actually happened. So just be prepared for those clips, because those are coming here shortly. But before those show up, I figure I should probably start at the starting, where you would expect the starting. Because yeah, it was a little chaotic. I feel like that's the best way to say it. Yeah, his birth story was just genuinely chaotic. So, let's dive into it right away as I get ready for the day, which I already said. So, look at me go. I'm doing great. I need juice. Very start of the story, the clips that you saw in the intro were from my first time at the hospital, because I had to go in twice. I went in the first time because my contractions were, like, not super close together, but they say to go, when your contractions are not, like, 3 minutes apart and stuff like that, because second babies, statistically speaking anyway, come a lot sooner, like quicker, faster, whatever the word is, faster than your first baby. So I showed up when they were like in between 10 and 7 minutes apart, and issue is that I wasn't dilated enough for the hospital to want to put me in a room for labor and delivery. So they tried to see if they could get me more dilated and stuff. Also, for context on why I was alone, my mom had to take me in because I was up at her house when it all started, and she was with Elias, who was not allowed into the room because of COVID protocol. So I was just in there chilling alone. I did message the narcissist with updates, and he was just like, I'm not coming in unless they actually put you in a room and it's like actually happening. And I was just like, well, I really just don't want to be in here alone. I could really use some help and support. And he was just like, nope, not happening. So I was like, okay, cool, thanks, appreciate it. So glad that you're gonna yell at me next week for not being a teammate, because I'm asking you to do things with your toddler so I could nap with the newborn, but you need to work on your broken car that's only broken because of you. We had a great dynamic at this point, as you can tell. But while all of that is going down... Hi, baby. You're bored? I didn't progress far enough along, you saw me update in the clips from the intro. So I go home I take a shower to rinse off the hospital because that's just always what I do. And it's like 1 o'clock in the morning at this point, and I am sitting with my uncle because he was still awake after getting Elias laid down in bed, and the narcissist went back to doing whatever it was he was doing. I can't even remember. But I'm sitting there chatting with my uncle. We're talking about the hospital. We're talking about why he's still awake and why he was on a phone call and stuff. And he's just venting about how ridiculous that phone call was. And we're just chatting. And as we're chatting and I'm sitting on the couch, his very expensive couch, my water broke. And I immediately panicked and I ran to the bathroom, cleaned myself up, and I let the narcissist know, like, hey, I gotta go in. Like, my water just broke. Like, it's go time. Mind you, this is our second child. So, like, water broke, yeah, time to go in. Time to go be seen. Man tells me to call the hospital and make sure that I'm supposed to go in now. Man didn't want to go in. At all. I was like, are you kidding me? So I call a hospital. So he can hear me on the phone at the hospital being told, yeah, we literally told you before you left that if it progresses further, like, and your contractions get closer together, or if your water breaks, come back in. And I was like, I know. You don't know the kind of idiot I'm dealing with right now. So we go back in, and this is where it gets really, really fun. I will go into detail in the video about how just, like, out of it I was, but before I start talking about the birth, in my previous video that I'm just gonna clip and post into this video, aspects to talk about. We left Elias with my uncle while my mom drove back down to pick him up and keep him for the night, because I didn't feel comfortable leaving him with my uncle. Not because I don't trust my uncle. Like, I trust my uncle with my life and with my children like there's no tomorrow. Very trustworthy person, but I didn't feel comfortable leaving him with my uncle because my uncle has PTSD, and I was like, if he's able to get sleep, I want him to be able to get some sleep because insomnia, and I don't want him to ruin his sleep and taking care of himself because he's graciously helping with Elias when my mom already agreed to watch him while I was in labor. So I didn't feel comfortable with it from like I would feel very guilty if it ruined his ability to get some decent sleep. So my mom drove back down, and she at this point in time lived a half hour away. So she drove back down basically after pulling into the driveway. Had to just turn right back around and come down to get Elias. And we go in, and I am on that medication that they gave me that I mentioned in the clip that you guys saw in the intro. So I'm like really, really tired. And I'm pretty sure parts that I didn't share about the birth is they're all like, when we get there and stuff, they're all really great. Staff, super, super great. They're just like, they're doing their thing. They're there. They're very attentive and supportive and stuff, right? So, great experiences with them. And at one point, a nurse turns to the narcissist who is playing games on his phone or texting somebody, or, you know, one of the many other options of your phone, scrolling Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And she is like, hey, so if you come and rub her back like this, and she started demonstrating it for him, it'll help her through the contractions. And he's okay. And when she's sitting there doing that, I'm gonna be honest, that was the most amazing feeling I've ever felt in my life. Like, that was, she's right. The way that it was helping me in that moment was unbelievable. And then she went back to doing what she had to do after showing him that, and he kept his hand on my back, and every time that I kind of glanced over my shoulder and stuff at him, he was sitting there with his hand on my back and just scrolling his phone, playing games, doing whatever he was doing prior to being shown that, and did not at all rub my back. So that was the support I had throughout this entire labor experience. Was I'll make it look like I'm supportive while doing absolutely nothing to help you through this really painful part of having a child. But you know what? At least it appears like I am. So I was like, oh, I love that for me. Thanks, man. Really appreciate that. I love that energy. You wonder why my family was not the biggest fan of you. Maybe things like that helped play a role. Could be wrong, but I feel like that probably played a significant role. And I know I didn't share that part when discussing everything, because I didn't share the things that made him look awful at this point in time like that. So I kept that part to myself and just pretended like he didn't play a role into why labor went as bad as it did. I was just like, oh, it was so traumatic, but like, he had a huge hand in why it was as traumatic as it was, and I just never mentioned it, because even though it was like my channel and I wanted to be truthful to my audience from my perspective, it was still very much so, but you have to protect his very fragile little ego. So, very upset with myself about that, because saying the truth shouldn't be so detrimental to a person. At least in my opinion now. Like, you should be ecstatic that people are sharing the truth about you. And if you're not, work needs to be done. But yeah, here's all of the talking from that point in time. I officially gave birth, and I wanted to talk about it. Like I've said before, quite a few times, I had a spinal headache with my last time around and stuff, with my boy, my other boy, because they're both boys. But yeah, I had a spinal headache last time because I had an epidural, and I leaked spinal fluid during that, and it gave me a spinal headache, and it was just a big mess and things like that. So this time around, I went like
as natural as possible. They did give me something in my IV for pain. I don't remember what it was called. If I remember, I'll put it somewhere on the screen so that way you guys know what it was. And it did literally nothing. I was dying the entire time emotionally. But yeah, I was actually handling it pretty well. Like, I was breathing through the contractions. I was like, trying to listen to my body and trying to listen to the doctors at the same time and do all of that. But I ended up completely breaking down and like sobbing and wasn't able to control everything as soon as they brought out the COVID test. I had been told on the phone this entire time that you give birth and then they do the COVID test, and if it comes back negative, you're allowed a second visitor, right? So I was under the impression that I was going to be able to, give birth and then get the test. What ended up happening is, in between contractions, they gave me the test. And that was when I just completely broke down, lost it. I no longer was like doing good birth-wise. And it went in this nostril here, my entire nose, and all of right here still hurts from it. It has been, it's almost 1 o'clock and I gave birth at 4:16 in the morning. So it's been hours since I had the test and it still hurts, like horrible pain. But yeah, they did that in between contractions, and everything I've like read and stuff, because nobody said anything about it here, but everything I've read said that bleeding after is very rare. I was bleeding profusely. I'll attach a picture of the little bit of blood that I got on the sheet of the bed. But they had to change my pillow twice because of how much blood was coming out of me from the COVID test. And it came back negative. So I'm at that stage where I'm like, of course you guys couldn't wait to do it after, and it came back negative. It wasn't even positive. And like, thank goodness I don't have, COVID-19, but at the same time, like, it completely shut me down. Like, I was in pain and I was like clutching onto this, just sobbing in pain, and then dealing with my contractions on top of the pain in my face. And then I look over and there's just blood everywhere. And I started sobbing more and hyperventilating. I was freaking out, which is not a good way to be when you're giving birth. So it made me a mess. Like, I wasn't able to calm down after that point in my labor. And yeah, it got to the point where I kept telling him, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And I'm like sobbing and I'm in pain and I'm bleeding everywhere, and I'm like, it was just a mess. So I ended up asking for an epidural, but of course by the time that I was asking for it, because I was in too much pain and I wanted to be done, he was coming. So I still gave birth naturally. Felt everything, and it was a big mess. But yeah, I pushed for about the same time. They didn't give me an exact time. When I have an exact time, I'll fill you guys in on how long I actually pushed for. They said that it was pretty similar to how long I had pushed the first time around. First time around, when I was pushing and giving birth, I pushed for 8 minutes, so they said it was similar. Not sure what the exact amount of minutes was, but I didn't push for very long. But yeah, I went from telling him I can't do it, cut him out of me, just cut him out of me, and they were like, trying to lift my legs and help me through it, and they were telling me to, breathe in, breathe out. They were trying to help as much as they could, but I lost it after the COVID test and bleeding everywhere, and I was freaking out from bleeding everywhere, and I felt like something was wrong because of that, and I kept saying like I was looking at my eyes and pleading for him to make them stop, because I was bleeding everywhere. My whole face hurt, my head hurt. I honestly, this part behind my eye and stuff feels very similar to how I just overall felt with a spinal headache, which is a feeling that I definitely didn't want at all. But yeah, I was a mess for it. They kept trying to get me to, make my grip not as strong, and I was like, nope, it's staying like this. But yeah, did all of that, and was just, not having a good time, basically. And I was just an emotional wreck, basically, for the entire labor, because I couldn't handle the test, because I couldn't handle bleeding so profusely and being in pain, and I'm still in pain. Like, it feels like there's a hole in my from my nose to my brain. That's what it feels like right now. But other than that, he came out natural, no problem. They didn't have to use forceps or a vacuum or anything. I had no tearing, which I decided his head is more squishy than his brother's, because I tore last time and I didn't tear this time. I've passed a couple clots already. Nothing that was concerning, so I'm passing a good amount of blood and blood clots and stuff like that, they said, so that's good. He's getting a bath right now.
Alrighty, so couple more things that I need to throw in before the video ends, and I do have children in here, so I will be very careful about how I word everything. But after having Levi, it was very early in the morning, and my mom had work, and she was unable to get out of work because she was a manager at this point in time. So she had to go in. So their DAD left the hospital and took Elias home, and they went back to bed, relaxed, and I don't know what happened for that day. I don't know if anything negative happened or bad happened. Couldn't tell you. I was stuck alone in the hospital. My mom brought me some Subway because I was starving, and the Subway at the hospital is open 24 hours. So I was like, that sounds delicious. I need food. So she brought me some of that, and yeah, I was alone with Levi that whole time, and their DAD didn't come back until I was basically getting discharged. And he could have come back earlier, because yeah, my mom and my uncle both offered to take over with Elias. And my mom did eventually take Elias, so that way we could get home and be waiting for him and stuff, and have everything ready to go for the introduction of the siblings. And yeah, it was weird. It was weird because it was nice having that alone time, because at least I didn't just feel alone with somebody else being there. It makes a difference. But yeah, I think that's like all that I really didn't include. It was overall a really upsetting birth. But it's okay, because Levi's here now, and he's a great kid. He's the one that you can hear and see messing with the curtains over there. Yeah. I have great children. Not to brag or anything, I just have really great kids. So, I guess it's fine that the births and hospital stays were kind of not great. Because, like, at least the kids are great. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.